I'd like to welcome you to the February 8th Public Planning Committee meeting. And Glenn, I'm sorry you're not 100%, but I'm glad you're with us via Zoom. I believe that the agenda should have an amendment regarding 5D. Is there a motion to amend?
Yes, Chair, I do have a motion to amend the agenda today and to remove item 5B. And then secondly, to add an executive session for receipt of legal advice protected by the attorney-client privilege on a proposed ordinance to amend Title 10, Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code of Town of Hilton Island to amend parking and/or occupancy regulations for short-term rentals and short-term rental properties.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Very much.
Mr. Chair, may I speak to the motion?
You may.
I'm going to vote against this motion, not the executive session part, but because we've been at this slog for months now. I respect that staff has given us some more information, but the second proposal, the new proposal, takes us in a different direction, which requires more analysis and raises questions. I have, notwithstanding that, I have made my analysis, I have my list of questions, and I'm ready to proceed. So I'm going to vote against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. I see 3, 1 against. Thank you. Kimberly, do we have citizens who wish to speak this morning?
We do. We should probably let's approve the minutes first.
Thank you very
Sorry.
much. Seeing item 3 on the agenda, is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Approved unanimously. Now, appearance by citizens.
Yes. We have Jay Sadowski.
This just on? Yes. All right. So my name is Jay Sadowski. I live at 28 Bull Elk Road West in Sea Pines, and I'm also one of the owners of Beachside Hilton Island. We're a small boutique short-term rental property management company. All of our houses are in Sea Pines. And I'm here to talk about the proposed short-term maximum occupancy regulations. I did also submit some written comments online, so I hope you get a chance to look at those. So I have 2 areas I want to focus on. One is just the timing of the regulation changes that you're talking about. So I understand that the proposed change is starting May 1st, 2024. That's actually really problematic, I think, for the industry as a whole. The bigger the house, the more number of people coming, the further these houses are booked in advance. So out of the 20-ish houses that we manage, I think we have 1 that might be impacted by the proposed regulations. But it's fully booked for May, June, July, August. So, I mean, we've already signed contracts with these guests. And, it's just really, hard to hit a moving target, right? But, we're all trying to play by the rules here, but it's very, very challenging when, what are we supposed to tell these guests? You can't come now, or you got to leave your kid at home, your grandson, your nephew, right? I think you get what I'm saying. The second is, I question whether there really is a need for additional regulation. The staff report talks about continued community concern with parking and short-term rentals. It's very light on specifics. So I actually submitted a FOIA request at the end of August just to get a list of all the violations or concerns that were submitted to the short-term hotline. So there's roughly 6,900 permitted short-term rentals. I've heard other stats that there's probably 10,000 on the island in general. Through August 2023, there was 215 complaints filed. 88 of those were about parking. 3 actual violations out of 6,900 houses, 3 violations. So I suggest there isn't a need for more regulation. I suggest that the current regulations are working as they're designed to do. And if there is, community concern, I don't know, I mean, call a hotline. Do more from an enforcement perspective, but current regulations do seem to be working. So thank you.
Thank you.
Patricia Courtney?
Trish Courtney, I'm part of HHVRA as well as own some rentals in Palmetto Dunes. They happen to be villas, but I actually wanted to echo what he said. We have been promised data and you're trying to fix a problem that you have yet to find what the problem is. You put in already 1 year of permitting, you have the data, you have the results, and it's not speaking to this major problem that you're trying to solve. I think in the world, we identify a problem and then we try and come up with solutions. We're coming up with solutions where we haven't identified and spelled out exactly what the problem is. Going forward, to look at limiting how you allow builds in the future, that's a different story. But what you're doing today with things that are already built, when you've already put in an STR and it is working, based on the numbers that we have gotten from FOIL requests, what are you trying to solve? Because I don't think you're solving anything. You're just putting something in out of emotion rather than data, rather than experience. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Elizabeth Petro?
Good morning. Thank you for hearing comment. And while I had a statement prepared while 5B was on the agenda, now that that's removed, I want to thank you for making that agenda amendment and taking the time that's needed to research the data that we have. We've gotten some data, clearly not enough, but in the data that we've received, I don't understand and cannot see what has brought us to the need to change the current ordinance as it sits. As the previous people that have spoken have said, the data didn't show that there was a huge need for changes to the current ordinance. So I appreciate you taking this off the agenda and taking the time to really understand that trying to implement something in a 90-day time period, we do all have fiduciary contracts with all of our clients. As we're having them sign all the town documents and the town requirements, we're also having them sign our responsibility to have these properties available to them as they're advertised. As the gentleman said, they are signed many times up to a year to a year and a half in advance. So whatever changes, while we hope them to be fair and reasonable, they need to be implemented in a time that makes sense, not after permits have been issued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lee Stevens?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank you for taking on this issue. I've reviewed both the plans from the last committee, or from the committee, and also the staff's plan, and I think the staff's plan is the better of the two. I think whatever changes have to be made to address occupancy need to be bulletproof and consider all loopholes. I'm a POA president of a small POA inside of Sea Pines, 190 homes. About 40% of our owners rent, and the other 60% is split half between full-time and those that have a second home. And occupancy, I think, is something that needs to be addressed. I don't want to, I think a lot of the things that you put in place already are working. But for example, there's a home in Sea Pines, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that lists for rent for Sleeps 24 because they've taken the living room and converted it to a bunk room. So I do see occupancy as an issue. How you control it, I agree with some of those previous speakers. You need to look at data, but I think the staff's plan of combining parking and capacity is a good thing, and it's something that you should continue to consider. And I also think that the reason I prefer that plan is that it addresses houses of all sizes. I think people are looking at the big houses. But the small houses are also an issue because people are trying to jam a lot of people into a small space. There's a safety issue there and also a parking issue that I think the parking will address part of it. I happen to have reached out to Steve Alfred last August about that house in Sea Pines, so I'm glad that this has become an issue that you're talking about. The other thing I would mention as far as parking is that garage parking shouldn't be considered, only because in most cases the owners lock off the garage and don't make it available. So if you consider that as part of your parking capacity, parking to capacity plan, you're probably eliminating 1 or 2 parking spots. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Martin Risman. Martin Risman. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Kim. New business, 5A, consideration of an ordinance to amend the Town of Hilton Head Island Comprehensive Plan to incorporate a housing impact analysis. Missy, welcome.
Morning. Good morning. Missy Lewick, Director of Planning. For the record, today I'm here to talk about an ordinance to amend our comprehensive plan to incorporate a housing impact analysis. So first I'm going to go through some of the background on the act that enabled the utilization of ATAX monies for workforce housing, and then the requirements to complete a housing impact analysis and how that's incorporated in the plan document that is before you. So last year, the General Assembly passed Act 57, and it allows our accommodations tax revenue to support the development of workforce housing, and the town of Hilton Head was instrumental in the passage of that act. Act 57 allows local governments to utilize a portion of its state or local accommodations taxes, or both, to be utilized in the development of qualified workforce housing as a tourism-related expenditure. The act requires that a local government entity who wants to utilize state ATAX for workforce housing to complete a housing impact analysis. So this document before you is like the prerequisite requirement that needs to be adopted as an amendment to our comprehensive plan to be able to then utilize that additional funding. So the housing impact analysis document itself serves as a foundational tool to inform decision-making and policy formulation. And there are several topics that we're going to go through. And within those components, it shows us a holistic understanding of our community's housing landscape and how we can implement targeted solutions to meet our housing needs. So the Act itself defines workforce housing, and it is defined in the Act as residential housing for rent or sale that's appropriately priced for rent or sale to a person or family whose income falls within 30% and 120% of the median income for the local area, with adjustments for household size, according to the latest figures available from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. So both expenditures of both state and local ATAX are capped at 15% of the local government's annual collections. The Act does have a sunset date, and as written, the Act would no longer be effective as of December 31, 2030. Again, the housing impact analysis document must be completed prior to second reading of an ordinance to Town Council for approval, and the approval process is an amendment to the comprehensive plan to include the housing impact analysis. So the Act defined the components that must be included in the housing impact assessment, and those include the cost of developing, construction, rehabilitating, improving, maintaining, or owning single-family or multifamily dwellings, an analysis of the relative impact of the ordinance on low and moderate income households, and then some cost information on housing related to reasonable estimates of the effect on housing costs, and a number of other analyses related to housing costs. Another requirement was that the housing impact analysis be provided to several agencies, the Department of Revenue and the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee, or TURC. We have submitted this to both of those agencies and have followed up and confirmed that they have received it. Also, I want to note that they've also confirmed that we were the first municipality in the state of South Carolina to submit a housing impact assessment. And then the third requirement is that the legislative body also receive this document as an ordinance, which will happen today. So the act states that the Department of Revenue may not disperse any tax revenue for workforce housing unless and until the local government has provided the housing impact analysis to the parties. There are some procedural steps that have to be taken that we're going through right now. We've completed the housing impact analysis, we've distributed it to the required entities, and we're going through the process right now to update and ratify our comprehensive plan. So the housing impact analysis has 5 areas of focus that are highlighted here: employment analysis, housing market analysis, housing market conditions, construction and development costs, and solving the housing crisis. The following slides will go through each of those subjects, and it pulls some of the highlights from the plan itself in the presentation. So first, the employment analysis summary highlights the percentage of various employment sectors and incomes for the region and the town of Hilton Head. Tourism and service-related employment sectors remain the top employment sectors on the island, which shows the nexus for the need of workforce housing within those sectors. And also that households are considered to be cost burdened if they spend over 30% of their household income on housing, and considered extremely cost burdened if they spend over 50% of their household income. We use a lot of data and statistics in this report, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics indicated that workers in the Hilton Head Island, Bluffton, Beaufort, South Carolina area had an average hourly wage of $22.21, which is 25% below the nationwide average of $29.76. When we also looked at, and a comment that came up during the Planning Commission's public hearing on this topic was additional analysis on our employment sector overall. And I think you're aware that our community has just under 40,000 residents, that we have approximately 24,400 jobs total, and that of those jobs, 8,800 of those jobs are filled by people who live and work on the island, and 14,600 are jobs that are filled by people who commute onto the island. And the predominant industry sectors, as we're a resort-based economy, are in those service, resort, accommodation, and food service sectors. We also have 34,000 housing units on Hilton Head. We have just over 7,000 short-term rentals, and we also have 3 million visitors who come to our island. So some of that, just background on our demographics of our island, are important considerations for the employment sector that we serve here on the island, and the importance of this work to be able to house the workforce that we need. So again, this section pulled data again from various sources, the Bureau of Labor Statistics as well. It shows some of those occupation sectors. It shows some hourly and annual salaries and what housing affordability would be based on those salaries and those occupation categories, and what they could pay with a 30% housing affordability rule of thumb, so they're not cost burdened, and or the 50% rate. Currently on the island, the average current median rent is $1,330. I know that sounds like a low figure, but it accommodates that we have some existing protected workforce housing or naturally occurring workforce housing that is very rarely available on the open market. And so market rents, what you would see advertised on Zillow or by a long-term rental property company, would be very different than the figure which composes the median rent. So there's a lot more that we're going to work on as it relates to our current median rent and market rents in our workforce housing program. But the data shows us that the current median rent is $1,330 on the island. So then we move to the market analysis summary. And this chapter highlights the current cost of housing on the island of both single-family dwellings and condos and villas. And there also was national real estate data, information that we sourced from the Realtors Association as well as the local Home Builders Association. There's a report that shows housing costs increasing over time. The chart goes from 2008 to 2023. The 2022 year-end market trend analysis indicated an increase significantly in median sales cost on the island of both single-family and detached homes, between 15 and 20% increases. Also, there's a affordability index that we refer to as well in that same timeline. This chart shows the continuing trend of housing becoming less affordable based on average incomes on the island. The lower the number, the less affordable the community in this particular chart. The housing market condition summary highlights various factors related to those increasing housing costs, and it focuses on the town's housing costs versus other rapidly growing markets within South Carolina. And these communities compete for the same employment sectors and employees, and Hilton Head was the most expensive housing market when we compared other communities, as you can see on the screen. So the housing market condition summary also goes into detail on the growth in housing prices over the last couple of years. Both of these charts show, the top one shows all home types, and the average is just under 800,000 within just the last 3 years. And the bottom chart is the same timetable just for single family homes, and it shows that at the end of 2023, the median home price for a single-family home on Hilton Head Island was over $1 million. So the construction and development cost chapter highlights specific development costs impacting housing affordability, and it covered a number of subtopics. And it's, I think if anyone has been working on their home or have opened their home insurance, they understand that there are some changes in those markets. Construction costs have increased, as well as mortgage rates and insurance costs. So the chapter highlights some factors, including land costs, and as you're well aware, our island consists of 70% of its land area is in a planned development community, which minimizes the availability of land that's available for the production of workforce housing. And more affordable land that would be conducive for a workforce housing project. Also, we, in the research that developed this report, spoke to some area land developers, and they indicated that the land cost alone for an apartment or multi-family development can be very high on a per acre basis. We also looked at construction costs and development fees and how those are changing. As far as construction costs, the average price per square foot that we identified in our research was $541. And additional research that just shows the increase in that construction cost from 2021 to 2023. And so if you were going to equate that to a 1,000 square foot house, then between that time frame, construction pricing grew from $279,000 to $540,000, and that is not inclusive of land fees, insurance, and taxes. That's just construction. So we do have development fees and we analyzed what an average fee basis would be for an approximate $20 million development of 50 dwelling units on a scenario that's listed above. And there are development fees that would be incurred for that plan review that could be around $360,000. And also there are permit fees and impact fees that can add up to equate to be around $3,000 per unit. I briefly talked about the increase in the insurance costs. There have been articles and notes that insurance costs have risen significantly, and in some cases, 500% increases. We have several data points that indicated that insurance policies on the island have doubled or tripled within the past 2 years. Also, mortgage rates have been increasing as well, and that limits affordable home buying opportunities. In August 2023, interest rates were as high as 8%. And the final section in the housing impact analysis is solving the housing crisis summary. And this chapter highlights past, current, and future strategies that the town has implemented or will consider implementing. Certainly, it pulls from the Finding Home Workforce Housing Framework that was adopted in November of 2022 as a key step in addressing our housing programs and policies to preserve and produce more workforce housing on the island. Also, with the adoption of the housing impact analysis, then that enables the town to have the authority to utilize up to 15% of the local A-tax monies to support workforce housing. So the timeline that this work has gone through, I guess I did not put on there, the Housing Action Committee reviewed the housing impact analysis at 2 meetings and in November, and then recommended it to Town Council for approval in December. And then after the Housing Action Committee did that, then we published the legal ad for the Planning Commission's public hearing, which was held on January 17th. And we are here today on February 8th and anticipate, if this moves forward, that this would be the public review timeline that remains. So that kind of wraps up my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Let me ask, Ms. Becker?
Though I would like to say, Missy, you guys did a great job. It's a good report, and I appreciate the effort that was put into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no questions from me, but a comment. We just returned from a meeting of the Municipal Association of South Carolina, where there were sessions educating local government officials about many matters. This is one of them. And I'm pleased to say that the town of Hilton Head is a leader in this. The presentation was done by the General Counsel of the Municipal Association and by our Deputy Town Manager, Josh Gruber. So we stand out in the state as taking on this, and we are going to be looked to for an example of how to do a housing impact analysis, because it is so well done. And kudos to the staff that worked on this so hard. I think that we like to be ahead of the game and to provide leadership here and in the state. So thank you very much for moving this along, especially as first out of the box.
Glenn, Mr. Stanford, do you have any comments or questions for Ms. Lewis?
Yes, I assume you can hear me. I want to say, Missy, this is an outstanding work product. High compliments to you and your team in putting this together. Then I would say it's really pretty scary, the numbers that we're facing here on the cost of housing and the cost of rental housing on this island. And so we need to implement as many tools as we can devise to try to meet this problem. And I think you've given us a road path moving forward. So thank you very much. Great job.
Missy, staff has done an outstanding job on this. I could challenge some of the assumptions in it, but my conclusion is that it would have de minimis impact on any sort of strategic decisions that council would make. So congratulations, good job. And you were asking for our approval of an ordinance to amend Title 10, Chapter 2? Okay.
Not Title 10, Chapter 2, a
I beg your
comprehensive
pardon, I
plan
was
amendment.
looking at,
One,
yeah,
to amend the comprehensive
Yes,
plan to
yes.
add the housing impact analysis.
yeah. I was trying to slide through the other one.
Oh, is that what you were trying to do, David? Well, my ears were ready there.
Is that correct? A
That's
motion?
correct, yes.
Is there a motion to do so?
Do we want to ask for public comment first before a motion?
Well,
or-
Normally, you, I think, provide the motion and allow the public
Comment on the motion.
to comment on the motion, but if you prefer to do it the other way,
Doesn't matter. I'm happy
The
to,
public gets to comment,
Oh, yeah,
and
of
we're
course.
good, however you want to do it.
and then we can amend the motion if we need to. But, well, I move to recommend a town council to adopt an ordinance to amend the Town of Hilton Head Island Comprehensive Plan to incorporate a housing impact analysis.
thank you. Is there a second?
Should say the
Second.
housing impact analysis.
Glenn, did I hear you?
Yes, second again.
Okay.
My second.
Time for public comment on the motion. Being none, we'll vote on the motion at this. Pardon?
I was going to wait to make my comments until after public comments. So if there are no public comments, is it time for council to make it? So it was a well-done report, and I do agree with you, David. There are some assumptions in there that I don't necessarily agree with, some that are very variable and changing. And so to rely on them as a forecast, even today versus when this was written, is somewhat problematic. But to take nothing away from staff, it was a well-written report. Fundamentally, I don't believe that government intervention in housing is where we should be. This is not government's role. And within that framework, the furtherance of growing government in Hilton Head to fully develop a Department of Housing, which some may say we haven't done, and I would argue with them that we indeed are doing just that, is not something that I can support. I do think that market conditions are important, and some of that often takes care of many of the issues. We also have other ways that some of the issues can be addressed that are not addressed, have not been addressed at all. We talk a lot about short-term rentals, and we all acknowledge that short-term rentals has taken off of the long-term market housing opportunities for our employees. That's problematic, and yet we've done nothing about it, but we can. We can have that discussion, and instead we're relying on things that I think many people don't agree is the right direction to go on. We can, as I have discussed for years, just talk about planning for, researching, at least investigating a transportation system from off-island, which allows our employees to live where they want, own what they want, and raise their children in the environment that they want to. But we don't talk about that. We talk about ever-expanding bridge. We talk about congestion. We talk about everything else but that. And so in my mind, there are other opportunities that should be part of a solution. Because I fundamentally disagree with this approach, and I fundamentally disagree with Act 57, I will be voting no.
Thank you. Have any comment?
Nothing else from me. Thank you, sir.
Stanford, anything else?
No, there's nothing further. Thank you.
Yeah, I have just one question, Missy. It's just more for public information. How often would this housing impact study be updated?
Well, yes, this is a point-in-time analysis, and it will be part of our comprehensive plan and then updated on that interval. However, within our housing program, we've identified that we need to assemble certain housing metrics to track regularly on a dashboard. And so with that effort, we would be tracking, but maybe not publishing an updated analysis, but we will track a variable amount of metrics on a dashboard. So we will select the metrics that we want to put on some regular interval, and as we identify what that program looks like and what we're tracking. But that is one of the identified strategies within the program.
Thank you. Although it's not exactly germane to our decision this morning, Ms. Becker made some statements about the support of the public to invest in housing. I'm going to make a couple of comments. The transportation issue of moving 15,000 employees to the island on buses that carry 50 people means that we would have 300 buses coming to the island every day. Today, Palmetto Breeze accommodates about 500 employees. It's impractical at this point in time to think that we can move that many people onto the island and distribute them to where they need to be employed. I just think that that is a stretch, but more relevant to what I believe. The housing that this community needs to build community is younger people coming to the island, growing with the island, providing the support the island needs, but also becoming a part of the island. Where do you think our leaders will come from if we aren't providing housing that younger people can live in? So I think it is an employment issue, obviously, but for me, it's how do you build a strong community without having young people in it to grow in that community and take over leadership over time. Thank you very much. No, let's not.
Well, no, but I think that's a great discussion, and I think that's what we're here for.
But no, it's not germane. But you brought it up. It's not germane.
But you brought it
I
up,
call
and
the
I'd like to
question
I'd like to answer that. With regard to the transportation, there are shifts. It's not, you paint a misleading picture of 14,600 people trying to enter the island at one time. You know, as I do, that's a big number, but there are various shifts, there are various days, and so it's not that full impact on a daily basis. So putting that aside, the idea of where do our future come from, I agree 100% with you, Chair, that we do need to plan for the future and provide opportunity. We do want a younger population to come and to live in our community and to grow. But within the framework of providing rent-controlled, subsidized, taxpayer-subsidized housing, what is their next step when they do grow? What is their next step when 4 people, 4 heartbeats in a condo is no longer sufficient and they want to move to the next step? Where is that opportunity come from? Because they're going to go from that rent-controlled, taxpayer-subsidized housing to a marketplace of 700, whatever number, 722,000, whatever the number was, as a median income home. So there's a gap. So we lose them anyway. I agree with you with regard to that, but this doesn't solve it. Thank you.
You can call the question at this time. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Glenn, is your right hand up?
It is, yes.
Thank you. We couldn't see it. Passes 3 to 1.
Turn me off, David.
If there's no other business, we stand adjourned.
We need to move.
We need to move.
I beg your pardon, I'm sorry. There was a request in the motion to add an executive session for the receipt of legal advice protected by the attorney-client privilege. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I move pursuant to the language you just read out.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Apologize for the misstep. come back and I'll report that no action was taken in the executive session, and we can stand adjourned at this point.